Hey there guys, Buddy here. So firstly, I want to start off by apologizing for taking so long to make a new video, but today we're going to be talking about the primary sector. Now, the main topics under this section would be agriculture, food security, and mining. So without wasting time and going back to the previous lesson, we learned that the primary sector is going to involve the extraction of natural resources, obviously from the environment. So how will agriculture actually contribute to South Africa's economy? Firstly, agriculture is going to produce food for the country. So that means that we're not going to have to import as much. And also, agriculture is going to contribute to food security. Now, we will be looking at food security in a bit more detail later on in the video. So secondly, it's going to earn foreign exchange by exporting crops and animal products. So that means that there's going to be more money that's going to come into the country, which will obviously boost our economy. Thirdly, it's going to contribute to South Africa's GDP. Remember, farmers are going to be paying taxes as well. Agriculture is going to create jobs for millions of people in farming, processing, and transport. It's going to support other industries like manufacturing, trade, and tourism. Agriculture is also going to help your rural communities grow and develop. Remember, farming is going to take place in a rural area where the roads and your other facilities are not going to be developed, right? Now, in order to get these crops from the rural areas, obviously, to your urban areas, the area will have to grow and develop. So that means that roads will have to be built. Other buildings and facilities will also need to be built. So in doing so, agriculture is going to lead to these rural areas growing and developing. So when we're talking about agriculture, there's going to be three different types of farming. We have subsistence farming, we have small-scale farming, and we have your large-scale farming. So let's take a quick look at this table, as it's going to give us a comparison of the characteristics of the three types of farming. So our first category will be the definition itself. So for subsistence farming is farming that is done mainly to feed the farmer's family with no surplus. That means that each and every single type of crop that this farmer will grow, it's all going to be consumed, right? So if anything is left over, it's probably going to be like maybe 1 carrot or potato. You can't go to the market to sell that 1 carrot or potato. So that's what subsistence farming is. You're farming just for yourself and your family. Next, we have your small scale farming, right? So this is farming that's going to be done on smaller plots, and you may sell the surplus for profit, or you can use it to support your family. Now that means that this farming is either going to be done on a commercial or a subsistence level. And when we're looking at our large-scale farming, we can see that this is commercial farming done on a large piece of land, obviously for profit. Now, this production of crops are either for your local or overseas markets, and again, it's going to be for a profit, as it is practiced on a commercial level. Now, our next category will be technology. So for your subsistence farming, it's going to be very low-tech. That means that you're mostly going to use your traditional tools, and you need to use your manual labor. Now, instead of having things like tractors, you're going to have your oxen-driven plows. So that means that all the farming that's going to be done under your subsistence level is all going to be done manually, either by women, by children, or your other family members. But when we're looking at your small-scale farming, it's going to use limited tools and it's going to have basic machinery, sometimes your traditional tools. But with large-scale farming, it's going to be very high-tech. You're going to use these advanced tractors, you're going to use complex irrigation systems, there's going to be the use of fertilizers, and many of these large-scale farms will also use your genetically modified crops. Now again, we will be talking about genetically modified crops later on in the video. Now when we're looking at yield, it's basically going to mean how many crops are harvested at the end of its life cycle. So in terms of subsistence farming, it's going to be a very low yield. That means it's often going to be insufficient for the needs, as it can be vulnerable to drought. So what that means is, in subsistence farming, the vegetables that they're going to get out is sometimes not even enough for the farmer and his family to consume, right? It's going to be a very low yield. When we're looking at your small-scale farming, you're going to have a moderate yield per hectare. That means there's going to be a medium amount. And it's often going to be dependent on weather and manual effort. And obviously, a variety of crops are going to be grown. However, when we're looking at your large-scale farming, there's going to be a very high output per hectare. Now obviously that's due to your mechanization and your inputs. And another thing to note about your large-scale farming is that generally it's going to focus on one type of crop. So let's say maybe sugarcane. Whereas with your small scale farming or your subsistence farming, they're going to grow multiple different types of crops. So whether it's carrots, potatoes, things like that, they're not going to only focus on one type of crop. When we're looking at size, your subsistence farming is usually going to be less than 1 hectare. That means it's going to be quite small plots of land, and again, it's going to be family run. With our small scale farming, we can have a few hectares or less, and it's generally going to be smaller plots on a single unit. Again, it can be run by women and the rest of the family. So in terms of your large scale farming, you're going to have hundreds to thousands of hectares. That means that this land is going to be huge, right? And obviously with huge land, you're going to have a large number of employees, all of which will be fulfilling your different roles. Now, in terms of importance, your subsistence farming is going to be critical for food security, and it does not contribute to the economy. Because remember, we did mention that in terms of your subsistence farming, it's just going to be enough for the farmer and his family to eat, right? It's not going to be sold for money. So it's not going to lead or contribute to the economy. Now, when we say it's critical for rural food security, we're basically saying it's critical in ensuring that people in the rural area will have enough clean, safe food to eat, right? So in terms of small scale farming, it's going to be important for local markets and rural income. So basically, it's going to help to reduce poverty in your rural areas. Because remember, some of these crops will be sold and you are earning an income there, right? It's going to reduce your rural-urban migration because remember, due to the small-scale farming, there are going to be jobs and there is going to be food. So that means the amount of people that are going to travel from your rural area to your urban area will be a lot lower. Now, it's not going to fully decrease it, but it will drop it quite a bit. Because remember, what's the main reason that people move from your rural areas to your urban areas? There's not going to be jobs, there's not going to be money, there's not going to be food, right? And again, your small scale farming is going to promote food security in your rural areas. Now with your large scale farming, it's going to be a major contributor to food supply for local and international markets because remember, a lot of these crops are going to be exported as well. Now obviously with each type of farming, we're going to experience some problems. In terms of subsistence farming, it's going to be vulnerable to drought, poverty, lack of infrastructure, because remember, this is just going to be farming that's done in your backyard. These farmers are not going to have any access to training, and it can be affected by your natural hazards. So let's say you have very heavy rain and there's going to be flooding. All your crops are going to die. And once all these crops are destroyed, that's going to lead to further poverty and food insecurity. Now, in terms of your small scale farming, you're going to have limited access to credit, markets, and training. Remember, again, this is going to be farming that's done by your family members. You're not going to have so much access to training, and you're not going to be having access to these international markets. So that means that your small scale farmers will have poor infrastructure, right? They will have problems getting finance. Now, in terms of your large scale farming, remember, this is going to be farming done on such a huge scale. So can you imagine how much of money is needed for doing that? Therefore, the first problem is going to be a high input cost. And that's going to be the cost of production. Remember, you're going to need these fancy fertilizers, you're going to need this technical and complex machinery, and that's all going to be very expensive. And also, again, because you're going to be having so many employees, you're going to have labor strikes, and that's going to delay your production times. Another problem in South Africa would be the white commercial farmers leaving the country. And remember, all over the world, not only in South Africa, we're going to be experiencing climate change. Remember, temperatures are increasing and that's going to affect your crops, and it could potentially lead to you losing all of your crops, right? And especially in terms of your large scale farming, that can be very detrimental. So now let's take a look at some definitions that we're going to need to know. Firstly, we're going to be looking at import. So that's going to be the act of buying goods and services from another country and bringing them into your own country for sale or use. Now we're looking at import market, and that's going to be the market within a country where your imported goods and services are sold. So now we're going to be taking a look at the opposite of imports. So we're looking at export and export market. So what does export mean? Export is going to be the act of selling goods and services to another country, and your export market is going to be the market in foreign countries where a country's goods and services are sold. So let's say you memorize import, just think of the exact opposite, and there we go, you have your export. Another definition would be your value-added products. So these are products that have been processed or improved in some way to increase their market value. such as turning raw fruit into fruit juice or jam. Right? Think about taking grapes and turning that into wine. Those are your value-added products. And the last definition would be your home market. So this is the domestic market within a country where goods and services are produced and sold locally rather than exported. Now, in terms of agriculture, the three main products that are going to be produced in South Africa will be cattle, maize, and sugarcane. So let's look at sugarcane first. Where is sugarcane going to be farmed in South Africa? It's going to be mainly farmed in KZN and Mpumalanga along the warm coastal areas. Now, sugarcane is going to grow well in hot, wet climate, and it's going to be used for sugar, ethanol, and other products. So how would sugarcane contribute to South Africa? Firstly, it's going to provide jobs, it's going to earn foreign exchange through exports, and it's going to support the sugar industry. But again, like all types of farming done in South Africa, we are going to experience some problems. So what are these problems? Firstly, drought. Remember, if there's no water, how are you expected to grow sugarcane? Secondly, we have your high production costs, we have pests, diseases, and competition from your cheap sugar imports. Now, in terms of pests and diseases, that can wipe out your entire field of sugarcane. That means that if you have a bad pest or disease that's going to affect your harvest, all your crops are going to die. So next, we're going to look at cattle or beef farming. Now, where in South Africa is this going to be farmed? It's going to be farmed in the Free State, Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, and Limpopo. Now, cattle will be farmed for many different things, right? It can be farmed for beef, it can be farmed for milk, hides, and also as part of your cultural traditions. But what is its contribution to South Africa? It's going to provide food, right? Obviously in the form of meat and dairy. It's going to provide jobs, foreign exchange, and your raw materials for industries such as leather. Now, when we're talking about problems that's going to be related to beef farming, we're going to have diseases like foot and mouth. Think about the drought. And obviously, if you have droughts, your grass is not going to grow. There's not going to be any food for these cows. Another problem would be your high feed costs, theft, and limited grazing land due to South Africa's hot conditions. And thirdly, we're going to be looking at maize. So where in South Africa will your maize be farmed? It's going to be farmed in the Free State, Mpumalanga, Northwest, and KZN. Now, maize is going to be South Africa's staple food and it's grown on both commercial and subsistence farms. So how will maize contribute to South Africa? Firstly, it's going to be the main food source for people, it's going to be feed for animals, exports for foreign exchange, and it's going to be an input for industries such as oil and starch. Some problems related to maize would be drought, pests, obviously like your armyworms, your fluctuating prices, and your high farming costs. So now let's take a look at this table that's going to display the summary of factors that are going to be favoring and hindering agriculture. So firstly, let's take a look at your factors that are going to hinder agriculture, right? So we have climate change. We know climate change and farming do not go together. Temperatures are getting hotter, crops can die, that can lead to droughts, and it can be absolutely detrimental to agriculture. Now, the next factor is going to be your natural hazards. So think of droughts and floods. Think about how that's going to affect your farming. Think about how that's going to affect your livestock. If there's going to be droughts, there's not going to be water for them to drink. If there's going to be a drought, all their food sources are going to die because there's no water. The next factor will be diseases and pests. Obviously, we know that, especially in your small scale and your subsistence farming, because the farmers are not going to have a lot of knowledge or training, it's very easy for pests and diseases to take place and occur in these types of crops. And if that's going to happen, again, that will further lead to poverty because their food source is going to be destroyed. And also because of South Africa's climate, wildfires can take place, and again, that will wipe out hectares of your farming land. And another very big factor would be crime, right? We know how many times we hear of cattle being stolen. So that's another major factor that's going to hinder agriculture. And obviously, in terms of your large-scale farming, because there's going to be so many employees working, a lot of the times there are going to be labor strikes taking place. And that's going to bring all production to a halt. Another major factor that's going to hinder agriculture will be HIV and AIDS. Now, in rural areas, people are not going to have access to medication. That means they're just going to get more and more sick and obviously end up dying. Also, a major negative factor would be rainfall. Now, in South Africa, we have very low and unpredictable rainfall. So that is going to lead obviously to your crop failure and your droughts. Now, when we're looking at factors that are going to be favoring agriculture, we can look at your fertile soils in certain regions, right? So think of parts of KZN that have very nice soil. That's going to allow your farmers to be able to grow strong, healthy crops. Another factor that could favor agriculture will be the availability of water from rivers, dams, and your irrigation schemes. Some other factors would be your government support programs and subsidies, access to local and international markets, and your established infrastructure. So think of things like your roads, your storage facilities, and your markets. Okay, so now let's take a look at food security in South Africa. So what is food security? When people at all times have access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs for a healthy life. Now we can break down this definition and make it quite simple. We can just say that food security is when people are going to have access to clean, safe food at all times in order to live a healthy life. Now, with food security, we can have the direct opposite, which is going to be known as your food insecurity. And that's going to be when people lack your regular access to enough safe and nutritious food for normal growth, development, and an active, healthy lifestyle. This can be due to the lack of money, resources, or access. And when talking about food insecurity, we have another extreme form of food insecurity that's going to be known as famine. So famine is an extreme form of food insecurity where there's a widespread shortage of food leading to severe hunger, malnutrition, disease, and a significant increase in deaths. So let's look at the importance of food security in South Africa. Now let's say you're in your exam and they ask this question: what is the importance of food security in South Africa? And let's say for some reason you forgot it, because that does happen, right? You can go to an exam paper and just forget every single thing. That happened to me personally. But my advice would be to just think of all the benefits of having access to clean, healthy food. Firstly, it's going to support good health and nutrition, right? It's going to ensure that people have access to balanced, nutritious food needed for growth, immunity, and overall well-being. Secondly, it's going to reduce poverty and inequality. So food security can help break the cycle of poverty by allowing families to spend less on basic survival and more on education and development. Thirdly, it's going to promote economic stability. A food-secure population is more productive, contributing positively to the economy through work, innovation, and reduced healthcare costs. That means that once people have enough food, basically they're going to be more productive. They're going to be able to do more positive things, right? And that means they're going to be able to work, they're going to be able to earn more money, take care of themselves, take care of their family, contribute to South Africa's economy, and continue to build our country. Number 4 is going to boost your educational outcomes. So children who are well fed perform better in school, increasing their future opportunities and potential. Now think about the children in your rural areas. Well, not only in your rural areas, but think about children who are poor and do not have any food. How are you supposed to focus on your work if your stomach is hungry? But if you have enough food, you're going to be able to perform better in school and you're going to have a better life, right? Number 5 is going to reduce your social unrest and conflict. Food shortages can lead to crime, protests, and instability. Ensuring food security helps maintain peace and order. So as you can see, if you really sit and think about it, you can come up with different points for the importance of food security. Basically, just sit and think about what's going to happen when people have enough access to food. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and say this is general knowledge. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but we have some teachers that take like the hardest concepts and they say, oh, this is just supposed to be general knowledge. Like, no, it's not. Calm down. So now let's look at the factors that are going to affect food security. So we have your negative factors. That means that these are going to be factors that are going to hinder your food security. And we have your positive factors. That means that these are factors that are going to promote your food security. So let's start off with your negative factors first. So the first will be your climate change. So this is going to be unpredictable weather, droughts, and floods. Secondly, there's going to be pests and diseases. And this is going to damage your crops and reduce your yields. So next we have soil degradation, and that's going to be due to your overuse, erosion, and poor farming practices. We have a lack of infrastructure, so that means poor transport and storage is going to lead to food loss. Another one that we don't really experience in South Africa is going to be conflict and war. as that's going to displace your farmers and it's going to destroy land. But one that we do experience in South Africa will be poverty and unemployment. This is going to limit the ability to buy food or farm efficiently. High population growth, this is going to increase the food demand faster than you can supply. High level of HIV and AIDS is going to lower your productivity, and in your rural areas, roads are not going to be developed. That means that there's going to be a lot of potholes, it's not going to be tarred. So now let's look at some positive factors. So these are going to be factors that are going to promote food security. So firstly, you're going to have your favorable climate. That means that you're going to have your regular rainfall and your suitable temperatures, which is ideal for the growth of plants. You have a government support. This is providing subsidies, training and food security programs. The use of modern technology, which is improved irrigation, tools and drought-resistant crops. Investment in infrastructure, so that's good roads, storage and markets. Remember, that's all going to lead to your promotion of food security. Access to credit and markets, this is going to help farmers grow, sell more produce. Education and training, this is going to allow farmers to use better, more efficient methods. The use of genetically modified seeds. Now obviously when we're talking about food security, we need to discuss your genetically modified crops and obviously its role in ensuring food security. So firstly, what are genetically modified crops? Genetically modified crops are plants that have been altered using genetic engineering to introduce desirable traits such as resistance to pests, tolerance to drought, or improved nutritional content. This is done by inserting specific genes from one organism into the DNA of the crop. So now when farmers use genetically modified crops, it means that the crops are not going to be easily affected by pests. It's going to be very tolerant to drought. That means that it's not going to consume a lot of water. So if we're going through times of drought, it will survive, it will not die out. So basically these crops are going to be stronger, more resistant. So your genetically modified crops can help to improve food security in several ways. Firstly, you're going to have an increased yield. So crops are going to grow more food per hectare. These crops are going to have a greater resistance to pests and diseases, and that reduces the need for pesticides and crop losses. In terms of drought and climate resistance, your genetically modified crops can survive in harsh conditions, and obviously you can have improved nutrition. So some genetically modified crops are going to be fortified with vitamins, example your golden rice with vitamin A. And again, one of the most important factors would be reduced input costs for farmers. So there's going to be less need for chemicals or water. Now this table is going to show us the advantages and disadvantages of your genetic modification. So you're welcome to take a screenshot and read it obviously when you're doing your self-study, or you can just pause the video and read it now. So what are some other methods to improve food security? And this is another table that you're welcome to take a screenshot of. This is going to be other methods to improve your food security. Again, you can take a screenshot and read it later, because if I'm going to go through all of this now, you're going to be sitting here for a very long time. But as you can see, it's not going to be too complex. So now let's look at our next factor, which would be mining. So let's look at how mining is going to contribute to South Africa's economy. Firstly, your mining is going to earn foreign exchange by exporting materials like gold, platinum and coal. It's going to contribute to South Africa's GDP because remember, your mining companies are going to pay a lot of taxes to the receiver of revenue. And obviously that's going to stimulate the growth rate of our economy. It's going to create jobs for thousands of workers. And remember, that's going to contribute to the economy obviously in the form of wages, taxes and salaries. It's going to support industries such as manufacturing, energy and transport. It's going to bring in investments from other countries. Remember, if investments are going to take place, that means there's money coming into our country and our country can continue to develop. It develops infrastructure like roads, railways and electricity. Now remember, these roads and railways are all going to be developed in order to transport the mining equipment, whether it's people or your minerals, from your mines to your industrial areas. It provides raw materials for local industries and it's going to help with community development through mining company projects. So let's look at the significance of mining to the development of South Africa. Mining has been the backbone of South Africa's economy for over a century, right? It led to the growth of major cities like Johannesburg. Mining created transport networks such as railways and roads. It brought foreign investment into the country. Mining encouraged industrial development, so your factories and your processing plants. It provided jobs and reduced poverty for many households. Mining exports helped South Africa trade with other countries, and it contributed to skill development and technological advancement. So by looking at these points, we can see just how much mining has contributed to the development of South Africa. But what are the main products produced in South Africa? Firstly, we're going to have gold. South Africa was once the world's largest producer of gold. Obviously, gold is going to be used in jewelry, coins, and electronics, and it has historically been the backbone of the mining industry. It's also the largest foreign income earner. Now, what challenges do we face when it comes to gold? Firstly, we're going to have your declining reserves. Remember, gold is going to run out, and it is actually running out. It's a non-renewable resource, right? We're going to have high production costs. Again, labor strikes are going to take place, and there are a lot of safety concerns in deep mines. Also, we're going to have a lot of diseases spreading due to your mine conditions. Our next product that's going to be produced in South Africa or mined in South Africa would be platinum. So South Africa is the world's leading producer of platinum, and that means that this is going to be a large contribution to our GDP. Platinum is going to be used in jewelry, catalytic converters, obviously in cars, and medical equipment. It also brings valuable foreign exchange. The challenges experienced with platinum mining would be fluctuating world prices is going to affect your income. You're going to have your labor unrest and strikes, and obviously we need to consider the environmental impacts of mining. And thirdly, we're going to have your coal mining. Now, coal is South Africa's main energy source, and it's going to be used for electricity generation. However, it's also going to be exported to other countries, and coal mining is going to support industries like steel production. But the challenges that we experience when it comes to coal mining would be air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. We're going to have health risks for workers. Again, these workers can develop your lung diseases. There's going to be a growing pressure to move towards renewable energy. Remember, coal is not going to be a renewable energy source. It's going to be a non-renewable energy source. That means once it's used, it's gone, right? You're not going to be able to reuse it again and again and again. Now, if you notice that with each major product mined in South Africa, a common problem would be your mine strikes. So what are mine strikes? So mine strikes are when your mine workers are going to stop working in order to protest for better wages, safer working conditions, or improved benefits. Workers are going to use strikes to put pressure on mine owners or the government to meet their demands. Now in South Africa, your mine strikes are going to be very common. Obviously, because mining is dangerous, your wages are going to be low, and sometimes your employees are going to feel that their rights are not respected. So that's going to cause them to now go and strike. So here are some ways in order to reduce your mine strikes. Firstly, provide fair wages and benefits, right? Ensure competitive salaries, bonuses, and benefits like healthcare and housing for mine workers in order to reduce their discontent. The next strategy would be to practice open communication channels. Establish regular dialogue between workers, unions, and management to address your grievances early. Improved working conditions. Now, this is one of the major contributors to your mine strikes. Remember, if you're not going to have good working conditions, how are you going to work there? So you need to provide safe, clean, and humane working conditions to reduce frustrations and hazards. Training and development opportunities. So invest in employee growth through upskilling and promotion prospects, making workers feel valued. If you're going to make workers feel valued, they're going to be happy to work, and that's going to make them very reluctant to go and strike. And you can see these are other strategies, but they're going to be, in one form or another, the same as having your open and clear communication channels. So again, you're welcome to take a screenshot and look at it later. So now we're going to end off with factors that are going to favor mining and factors that are going to hinder mining. So let's look at your factors that are going to favor mining in South Africa. So firstly, there's going to be large reserves of minerals. Remember, South Africa has a lot of gold, platinum, and coal, right? Diamonds as well. We have a skilled labor force and mining expertise, right? Another factor would be advanced mining technology and equipment. There's going to be strong transport links, such as your railways and your ports for exports. There's going to be high global demand for these minerals. mining contributes greatly to GDP and foreign exchange, and obviously government assistance will allow mining to take place. But when we're looking at factors that are going to hinder mining in South Africa, obviously there's going to be very high costs of production. So that's going to be things like your labor costs, your electricity, your equipment, because you need very complex equipment, right? Also, you're going to need a lot of these machinery to remove these minerals, to transport these minerals. That costs a lot of money. So that's obviously something that's going to hinder mining in South Africa. We have your mine strikes and labor unrest. Obviously, we just spoke about that, and we spoke about how it can delay production and mining. We have your safety risks and accidents in deep mines. Now think about how often some miners get stuck, in these deep mines. Think about how easy it is to get hurt in those deep mines. Another thing, we have environmental damage and strict regulations. Now certain types of mining will obviously contribute greatly to pollution, right? So that's definitely a negative factor. Another factor would be your falling commodity prices in world markets, the depletion of mineral reserves, right? What's going to happen once all these minerals are removed from the Earth's surface? What's then going to happen? And the last factor that's going to hinder your mining in South Africa would be the distance to markets. And that's it for today, guys. I want to thank you so much for watching. This was just a quick, simple explanation on the primary sector, obviously from your economic geography chapter. Remember, stay cool, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.